With our popper sides glued up, and I've sanded all the face nice, smooth and level, it's time to make provision for the tins. Now there's two ways of doing this. You can actually go to your table saw and set your blade 1/2 inch deep. And simply, you have to do a stop. And you simply run the same, you want to kerf right along the edge, right at the edge of your mortise. So it's just a 1/2 inch cut, 1/2 inch deep, the width of the table saw blade, which is about 1/8. Come right on down, and when you get in here, you have to stop. Takes a little setting up, but what you're going to do is you're going to cut a groove right down through here. Now the object of that, as we explained earlier, is that when we go to put the tins in, we can simply, and we showed you, we flex the tins, slide them into the slot. My preferred way of doing it is using a wing cutter. And this is what I'm talking about. It's a 3-wing cutter on an arbor, and it has a bearing. Now, what I like to do, they're not real expensive. Now, this one's 1/8 of an inch. If you notice right here on the back side of this, let me grab another one here. Typically, when you buy one, it will have one bearing. But you can also get an extra bearing. Again, not super expensive. And simply remove the top, remove it, and I've inserted another bearing on the bottom. Okay? What that allows us to do is when we're tracking this, when we come around here, what's going to happen is this top bearing in this case, what it's going to do is it's going to ride right along the edge and guide us. Without the second bearing, you have to be very, very careful, because what will happen is, even though the bottom bearing can track against the post, when you get to this point, this area on the wing cutter can engage the edge of the rail. See what I'm showing you? So be careful with that. Okay, since this is 101, let's talk just a little bit about a router. Just so you know, if you're handling a router, in this case handheld, you always go left to right. In a table, you go right to left. You're simply, because you're going upside down. Let me explain why. If you take a look at a router, when you start this router, it's turning clockwise. And what happens is, these cutters, or any bit, will act like teeth. That's what they are. And what they will do, the object of the game is you always want to push a cutting tool against the wood, or the wood against the cutting tool. Imagine, if you will, your table saw, if it turned in that direction and you got all those teeth on there, where you stick a board in there, man, it's going through the wall that quick. Router's the same way. So you want to go left to right in a handheld, right to left when it's inverted in a router table. Now, could you do this on a router table? Well, of course. Just turn it upside down and do what we're getting ready to do. But the reason I'm doing this is because, well, this is easy for me, but one of the things you notice on the edge of this post, that does not give us a tremendous amount of bearing surface. And if you're not very proficient with the router, you can tip. Very easy to do. Here's a quick solution. The other thing you notice, I've got a large base. I like that just simply for stability. And in a lot of your routers, And with a wing cutter, now odds are you're not going to be all the way up in here. But sometimes I'm running large bits, so I have a large opening. Now, so what I do is simply take some double-faced tape and I put a block on. Number one, get good tape. Number two, don't be chintzy with it. Those of you guys don't speak Southern, chintzy means make sure it's going to stay on there. Yep. All right. Also make sure that you're going to locate it where you're comfortable when you're running. Now I have this on, not hitting my wing cutter. So what's going to happen is as I go around, that's going to give me a guard that I'm not going. Now when I get in a corner here, I'm going to have to turn and pivot a little bit. But I'm going to run this side, then I'll go around and run the other side. Again, handheld, left to right, in a table, right to left. Okay, let me lock this down and we'll run it. Now, this is an operation where I don't have one on, but you really need to wear a dust mask because router's going to throw a lot. So we're just going to do a little section because I can't film and talk with one of the things on. So we're just going to run a little bit so you see what you're doing. Now you notice my little stop block, or my little block here was kind of a little bit in the way and I just kind of had to flow around. And that's not going to hurt anything as long, and you can just adjust your block if you need. And so all you want to do is route this slot in here. We'll come back, I'm going to finish this up, we'll come back and look at it and see what we got. As you can see, what we've got is we've just got our slots cut. Now, if you look at this, you can, I think, hopefully envision, again, using the table saw. Now, the other thing you want to do after you've done it, and I want to reiterate, I don't think I said it, is when you set the depth on your bit, you want to set it right with this edge so that you create, a nice opening. And that keeps all your sides the same. But there's something that happens. Using the wing cutter, in the case of the table saw, not the case. The wing cutter is going to leave us a radius corner. This corner is going to be rounded. So before you take your wing cutter out of your router, take you a scrap piece of MDF or something and lower, raise your blade and just bump it in so that you can see the radius that it's creating. The reason for this is we're going to have to trim our tins a little bit. We're just going to have to nip a corner around. And this gives us a pattern to do that with. We'll be able to see exactly what radius we need to cut. Not difficult. Okay. In the maple pie safe, the one that's going to be painted, we have a little different scenario in the mortise and the tenons. So we want to get it up and take a look at that. Before I do, let me find my paper here. Ironically, here in Virginia, one of our little local papers happened to be doing an article on pie safes. And they're doing a big thing of hunting, tracking down old pie safes and whatever, and they're talking about how trendy they are to have and so forth, so on. But I wanted to show it to you for two reasons. One, you see the style. Now this one, I hope you can see it, has got a little turn foot, and it has the drawers at the top. has a, I don't know if you can see it up in here, it's got a little galley. A galley is just kind of a wing on it. Thinking I might do that on the oak one, just for fun. And I don't know if you can see or not, but I want you to look at, if you can look right here. The bottom of this door is kicked out. And this, again, and the reason I'm showing you this is very, very indicative of when you do doors, particularly when you're using narrow material. The doors like to move around. So when we get to doing the doors, we're going to be doing something different. We're going to be using a technique to help prevent that. But I just want to show you that it happens even in the, I've seen pie safes and the doors are all going every which way. So we're going to look at that. Just wanted to show it to you. Okay, let me get the maple stuff out and we'll get back to work. Now this is going to be the painted one. So, but one of the things we're doing in this one is we're going to put drawers in the bottom. Now that brings us a little bit of an issue. Let's grab our newspaper here again. Just going to get zoomed in here a little bit. If you can look, it's going to be very hard for you to see, I think, on camera. Right here on this side, you'll notice there's a big, wide panel. And that's to maintain the flow, meaning we want to keep this line flowing around the piece. We want to keep a nice line going. So here's what we've got. When we put, I think we've got 1.5 inch rail that goes under the door, 5.5 inch drawer, and a 2.5 inch bar underneath that, or rail. That's a big panel. The problem, actually this panel on this one, take a look here real quick, is 12 3/8 inches. Now here's what I've got. Here's my problem. A panel that wide, wood expands and contracts. It doesn't grow for the most part. It expands and contracts across its width. So a panel this wide is going to move this way. If we cut a big, huge mortise in here and we fully glue this whole thing in, it can't move. So what's it going to do? It's going to crack, in all likeliness. That's solid wood. If it was plywood, no issue. But solid wood expands and contracts, and you have to make provision for it. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do a combination of things. This tenon right in the center here is about 4.5 inches wide. This one's 1.5 inches. And if you notice on this post, we've got our mortises ready to go. But we're going to use a technique that's often referred to as a draw tight. Now we're not going to actually do a draw tight, and I'll explain that when we get to it. But what we're going to do, this is using the pegs. These are going to be peg joints, no glue at all. Now the center mortise we will glue, but the top and bottom we won't. Because again, we're going to be forcing this panel to expand this way. Okay? Then what we're going to do, when we peg this joint, we're actually going to elongate the holes in the tenons. And this will allow this panel, even though it's in there, it's going to allow this panel to expand and contract. That technique has been around, I think, since the beginning of time. You know, many, many years ago when I used to do a lot of antique restoration and stuff like that, you know, you saw furniture and stuff all the time that were put together with nothing but pegs. And I think I mentioned in one of the earlier episodes about going to see King Tut's tomb, and everything was pegged together with wood pegs. So it's a technique that is super strong, and we're going to use it. The first thing I need to do is I need to cut out my tenons. Now your question may be, why didn't I just do a long one, glue the middle, and then peg the ends? I could have, but I'm trying not to remove any more. I want to keep some meat in here. I mean, we've only got a 5/16 shoulder here. And so I don't want to remove that any more material from my leg than I have to. So that's why. Okay, what we want to do is we have to set it up, and we have to lay out where our mortises are going to be. Our tenons. So all I'm going to do is just kind of eyeball them here and mark what I need to remove. Now, there's one thing you're going to have to remember. Because this panel can move, we don't want our tenons tight to the top and bottom of the mortise. We want it to be able to move. So that's what we'll do. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bandsaw, and I'm going to saw my waist out here. If you don't have a bandsaw, you take a handsaw and do it. And then I'll make a cut here, sweep in, sweep back. Now here's one of the things you do not want to do. Don't try to cut all the way to the very edge, because your bandsaw can leave you a nasty edge. So leave about a 1/16 in here. We'll come back, take a chisel and clean it up. Again, if you don't have a bandsaw, you can take something like a coping saw, or in this case a fret saw, and you can just, saw down, saw your majority of your waist out, then we'll chisel it. Now this one I've already done, and again, just as we did on all the others, when we ran everything with our table saw, we left there a little bit of edge here. And again, just a good sharp chisel. How can you tell your chisel sharp? If you're working on a hardwood in particular, something like this cherry, and when you make the cut and the wood comes up looking wet almost, let me get a spot here and show you. This chisel could use a little honing, but I got some tough cherry here too. And I left it a little heavier than I should. But what you want is you want it to cut and leave a wet look. Tell you what, we're going to touch this chisel up before we go too far, but it's still leaving a relatively wet look. See what I'm talking about? You want it to shear off, but very nice. Okay, we're going to cut this, get it ready. And when we come back, we'll be ready to put it together and drill our holes for our draw-tight joint. I've got the panel in. I trimmed up my tenons, and I'm about 1/8 of an inch from the top and well, not quite 1/8, about 3/32 from the top and the bottom. Again, room to move. Now then I marked the center of my tenons, and then I came in from the edge, came out just a little bit over 5/16. I've got a 7/8 tenon, so I want to keep plenty of material on the end of that tenon. I've got a 1/4 inch bit, and I've marked it for depth. I only need to go about 1/4 inch below the bottom of the mortise, meaning I only need to get about 1/4 inch down in here, and I just simply drill it. Okay, now I need to take it apart and elongate these holes. So let me get it apart and we'll take a look at that. Okay, if you have a drill press, to set your drill press up in alignment with your hole and just move left and right a little bit, that's a real easy way to do it. Now again, we only have to do the outer ones. But most people don't have a drill press. So here's what I've done. I've gone to a smaller bit. Now the reason I've got the stick here, in larger applications, you can actually just stand a stick up that is the width of it is the space between the edge of the hole and the panel. And just use it as a guide and drill a little bit. Get it. In this case, the other thing you can do, which I'm going to do, is I've got a smaller bit. And I'm just going to drill it. I don't need this. I'm just going to drill it just a little bit below. Now you want a brad point bit for this. Now a brad point bit, is, in case you don't know, has got that little spur on the end. And I'm just drilling a little bit on either side of the hole. Somebody's going to ask me, can't you just take a drill bit and do like this? You know, not really, because then what it does, what you don't want to do is lose the sides of that hole. Then just take you a small chisel and chisel your line straight. Now what the other thing I like to do is I have a little 1/4 inch. Basically, it's a chainsaw file. All it is. And I just run up, run down, and I have an elongated hole. Now, the other thing we're going to do is we're actually going to be, like I said, we're going to peg these, but I'm not going to do that right now. And here's why. This is the one that's going to get painted. If you go look at old period furniture, and particularly old pie safes and whatever, and we talked about those pegs. Over time, those pegs, you would see the heads of that peg proud. Proud meaning sticking out a little bit. So what we're going to do, and because we're going to be painting this and want to make it look old, what we're going to do is we're actually going to get the entire pie safe sanded. Then we're going to put the pegs in. And we're going to cut the pegs a little bit proud. Have them stick out a little. Then we'll be coming back using a dye and dyeing a lot of the pie safe a darker color. And then we'll be painting it and wearing some of the paint off. By leaving that peg just a little bit proud, when I start wearing it down, that peg's going to show. Makes a nice, just a nice little trick and a nice little look to get an old piece looking old. Just one of those little subtle things that you pick up on. Okay, what I've got to do now is I've got to come by, I've got to get the other one done, and I'm going to go ahead and glue the sides up in this. But before we do that, I want to talk to you just a little bit about the oak one. I'm going to show you we're going to do something just a little bit different. On the oak one, because I'm going to do a scroll on the bottom of it. And so, you know, in the poplar one, our bottom rail under the doors is 2.5 inches. This one's going to be, I think, 4.5, I don't recall exactly. But that gives me, again, a wider panel. Now this panel is actually 7 5/8. And so that gives me a 6 1/8 inch tenon. Now I actually took a little bit more off the bottom here. But what I'm going to do is similar, but I've got a full mortise. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm simply going to do the draw tight again. I'm going to do it here and here. And I'm only going to glue the center part of the piece of wood. Now, the question would then come up, says, well, in that narrow, do you really need to do the draw tight? Probably not, but it's not hard to do, and I know that if I do that, I've got a good sound joint, and I like the looks of the pegs. That's me. And so that's what I'm going to do, just so you know. Exact same thing. The only difference is, like I said, I'm just going to glue the middle, put me a draw tight about right here, and one about right here. So, next, we'll have all the sides glued up. We'll get them routed out, put the tin in. Then we're ready to look at our rails and put the cases together.